Good evening, everybody. The time's 7:30, so we'll make a start. Warm welcome to members of the public. I'll start by reading the emergency evacuation announcement. Should we be required to via the nearest available exit to the chamber. Our assembly point will be in the public car park at the side of the Civic Suite. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. And please note that this meeting will be audio recorded. Can I also please ask members and members of the public to turn off mobile phones or put them onto silent. Thank you very much. On to the agenda, item number 1, which is apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Milne. Any other apologies? There are none. Substitute members, we have Councillor Weston and Councillor Lucas Gill. And non-members attending, Councillors Sperring, Rowe, Steptoe and Mrs Hoy. At this stage, members, if I can just ask, as Councillor Milne has given his apologies for this evening's meeting and I don't have a vice chair, I have asked Councillor Dray if he could take up the position of vice chair just for this evening, just to assist me. I'm assuming that nobody has got an issue with that.
No, I agree with that, Chairman. Thank you.
If members are happy with that, can I ask Councillor Dray to join me just to help me this evening? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 4, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of April 2017. The minutes have been circulated. I know it's been a while, obviously since this meeting. Are members happy for me to sign those minutes? Thank you very much. Item number 5, to receive declarations of interest. Councillor Mr Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to make a declaration that none of the Green and Roxbury District residents members present, even those who are non-voting, are not whipped this evening.
Thank you very much. Councillor Newport. Thank you. Councillor Stanley. Okay. Councillor Shaw.
Not declaring interest because I've just become a committee member of Sanctuary as from May.
Thank you. Councillor Dray.
Item 6, Mr Chairman, by virtue of being a member for Rayleigh Town Council.
Thank you very much. I also need to declare interest in item 6 by virtue of being a member of Rayleigh Town Council and also for residing in the area. The next item is obviously number 6, which is the Air Quality Action Plan. Having discussed the agenda this evening, if members are in agreement, as there are members of the public here this evening, we will look to bring forward item 10 to this section of the meeting. Are members happy with that? Okay, thank you very much. So, agenda item number 10, which is the investigation into issues raised by the petition presented to Council on the 25th of April, is to consider the information gathered at the meeting of the Review Committee on the 1st of June 2017. Members would have had circulated to them a summary of the questions that were asked on the evening and the answers that were given, and I hope everybody's had a chance to have a look at those. I am also aware that there's been a further email sent in to some of the councillors with some questions I think that may be raised this evening by some of those councillors. So I think we'll start this agenda item by asking if anybody has any further questions that they want to raise or recommendations they want to make, or Councillor Mr Mason.
Well, to break
Well, we've got a microphone this evening, so even though don't really need it. Okay, this is my view, and this is what I would like to see the review committee reflect in its report and recommendations to full council. I know this won't please the petitioners, but having considered all the matters and other evidence that I have seen about the level of homelessness, or general homelessness in our district, it would be undesirable for residents to continue to be placed in B&B in Southend, Pitsea, Harlow or even Kent. And I think it's too late to make a change to the rearrangement for tenancy of, or to ask Sanctuary to consider a change of tenancy for Francis Cotty Lodge and Clarence House. I was a little surprised to learn from the previous meeting where questions were asked that the initiation on this change was made by officers of Rochford District Council to Sanctuary. It wasn't a Sanctuary initiation, and that's a fact, and that's a finding, in my opinion, Chairman. I was a little surprised that this wasn't flagged up in detail at the extraordinary full council on the 8th of June 2016, and more particularly because the item was in exempt, members couldn't consult with the public, and I think that was a failing of the council to leave members in a position where not only it wasn't flagged up for detailed consideration, but it was fairly buried in a fairly detailed report of variation that members wouldn't have been able to raise it with the public, engage public opinion anyway. I learnt from questions that I'm not at all sure what the role of board or committee members in the Rochford Housing Board or now the Rochford Committee for Sanctuary. I think it needs clarification. And I don't know whether they represent Sanctuary, the council, residents, or just themselves as individuals. Reference was made by Councillor Lumley that the matter of report back would be discussed at a future Rochford committee meeting, and I think that my recommendation would be yes, they must report back in future. But there is clarification required on what role they actually play. I was concerned, Chairman, in answer to my question that I didn't get a very clear understanding with 75 elderly people on our housing list as to what the plan is for housing elderly that need assistance with housing. And I think that needs to be a recommendation to full council that such a plan is elucidated and reported to full council by the housing options officers. And finally, Chairman, the nomination agreement. I would like our officers in housing options to put together in a report to go to full council for full council to decide what terms are actually going to apply to the nomination agreement. So those are all the things, Chairman, I'd like to be reported as findings and recommendations. I'm sure there will be additional ones from other members, and obviously we can all take a view on how we see those as the meeting proceeds.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mr Mason. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, the questions that were asked, there were 3 questions that were asked to the action group, if you like, and they gave their references to that. At no time was was their questions answered specifically, which I found very disturbing from the ward councillors alone, of which one indicated that he was only interested in the money value of the transaction, which goes to say that really are the ward councillors working for RDC and the residents of RDC, or are they working for the sanctuary who have taken over the properties? Several things come to light where there was suggested, or it was said at a full council meeting, that there was only one resident in the property at that particular time, which was the last full council meeting, which you will know, and yet there was 4 residents in there, and as from the last meeting that we had, there was 2 residents left in there. So the situation is that we wasn't told the whole truth, and yet that's what we was given to understand from that ward councillor. I'm shocked at that as well. So there's several inconsistencies here, and I think that we should make sure that we're getting the right information, and I would like that noted, that we, you know, to get the right information and to get these questions answered by the residents. I'm sure that had they have been given the right information from the ward councillors at the time, we wouldn't have had most of what's happened. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Gooding.
I recommend that the review committee recommends to the council, as a valued partner of sanctuary housing, continues to provide the information and updates for the local residents on the changes to Francis Cottage Lodge.
That's a recommendation that you'd like to put
Move.
forward.
Yeah.
To move. Okay.
Are we on? Mr. Chairman, I'm quite confused with part of the evidence that was given. Sanctuary Homes, they stated that the Francis Cottage Lodge was in good order and abide by the government standards. But then we heard from Councillor Ward, and his words were, he's worked for a number of years with the residents of Francis Cottage, and his concerns was with the state of the building, the water supply, and water coming from 2 parts of the roofs. So, what part are we led to believe? Was it in good state, or as Councillor Ward says, it had holes in the roof and a bad water supply?
That we noted. Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I quite understand the residents' frustration, the way that this situation has been so poorly handled. I can understand the distress, and I can understand why we have so many people with so many concerns still after lengthy debates. I think one of the issues stems from the origination of this discovery, when we discovered that the initiative was instigated by an assistant director and not through any members, not through the full council, which I think is a process that needs to be looked at. The responses also received that not only the main issues are not only of process, which the process has totally failed our residents, because if it hadn't failed our residents, they wouldn't be concerned, but poor communication, and compounded by a lack of open and transparent reports from both RDC's representatives and the council as well. And again, some of the questioning at the meeting, we found that answers were not there. And I would certainly second the recommendation that any nomination agreement now is put forward for agreement by full council, so that we have some open and transparency. A little late and a little too late probably, but we are where we are, and all we can do is try and get the best of the situation and hope that this type of problem doesn't occur again, and hopefully have a learning curve from this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. My question, or sort of perspective on one aspect, is in relation to potential conflict of interest. Now, I know that our monitoring officer gave a view in relation to this, but it's in relation to a ward councillor who's also a portfolio holder for planning, and also is on the committee for the sanctuary housing, as to whether this is a potential conflict of interest. Bearing in mind, as what Councillor Mason, John Mason stated in relation to, we do not know specifically what the role is for these individuals on the sanctuary committee. It hasn't been explained to us in detail as to what that particular role is. Without having full knowledge of that, there's always going to be a potential question as to whether there's a conflict, in particular in review in relation to the public's perspective. And it's ultimately the public's perspective as to whether there's a conflict of interest is the issue here. And that's my point of view anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hazelwood. Is that a motion, Councillor Goodin? It is, yep, and it's seconded by Councillor Hazelwood.
Can the motion be repeated?
Could you do that for me, Councillor Goodin?
Yeah, I'll find the page.
I'd like to put forward the recommendation for the committee to recommend to the council that as a valued partner of sanctuary housing, it continues to provide information and updates for local residents on the changes to Francis Cotty Lodge.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stanley, did you have a question with regards to that motion or a comment? You had indicated, was it? Yep, okay.
Motion, sorry, is the motion indicated that more information or information gathered from Sanctuary and RDC to come to the committee or full council? Where does it lie?
Councillor Goodin, do you want to answer that? Or? There we go.
Please. No, this is an ongoing situation. I'd like it to continue with the council and sanctuary, as they already have a very good partnership working agreement, so an ongoing situation.
Okay, thank you very much. Does that clarify that for you, Councillor Stanley?
Thank you, Chairman. Not really, because I'd like that also included residents as well. Please.
Sorry, can you just clarify that?
Amend that to not only RDC and Sanctuary, but to residents that are concerned with that.
I think that does form part of it, doesn't it? And updates for local residents.
Can you
I
explain?
think that's included in there because it does word it, and updates for local residents. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is in the motion that's been
Okay,
put forward. Right. Okay, Councillor Mr. Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got to record publicly, I can't support that motion, not because there's anything wrong with that particular motion, except it's completely incomplete compared to the issues which I think were probably 6 or 7 that I raised when first speaking. Therefore, if that is purely the only recommendation to full council, I shan't be supporting it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Mr Hoy. Sorry, I didn't realise you were talking to the motion.
No, thank you. My
Apologies.
my group leader, Paul Drank on me there and just spoke before me, but I'm very happy with that. I was going to say that I have a lot of problems with the motion as it stands. It doesn't really fully deal with the issues at hand or deals with how the council dealt with this matter and how it would deal with this matter in future. I'll just echo the points already made. I think perhaps I'd like to emphasise mainly the poor process and communication in the first stages. The processes for both Sanctuary and for us as a council were very poor, and we didn't deal with this matter properly, and I think that needs to be taken back to the council to make sure it is dealt with properly in the future. I think board members are not... The issue around board members aren't dealt with by the motion. I'm trying to keep to the motion, if you notice. Aren't dealt with properly within the motion. There's definitely, from the meeting we had on the 1st of June, I think there definitely came across a feeling to me that the board members weren't quite sure who they were representing or who they should be representing on the board, whether it be Sanctuary residents or residents of Sanctuary themselves. They're just two examples of why I think it fails. And again, probably critical to this, it fails to address the issues around nomination rights, which I think are just left wide open still, and the fact that from the meeting on the 1st of June again, there still to be just the contract hadn't even been dealt with. It's not even been signed or agreed, and it's just wide open. And I think we, as a council, the motion, any motion put forward tonight, which I could agree to, would have to include all these points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs Mason.
Ask or inform Sanctuary to do anything. We're putting a motion on a third party that we have no control over. So I'm slightly concerned about the wording, but that aside, this motion does not reflect any of the problems that have been discovered by this process of this review committee. The objective of the review committee is to ask questions, is to find out what's gone wrong, why it's gone wrong, and make proposals to redress those problems. All the problems that have been discovered are not covered by this motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions with regards to this motion? No? No. Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to the councillors, and I agree on some of what they're saying. We can't turn the clocks back. Sanctuary Housing obviously owns Francis Cottage Lodge, and we're given the opportunity of assisting or helping our homeless residents, which is what we're doing, because obviously it's costing us a lot of money. Yes, I do believe that we need to look at things better and put processes better when things like this are coming up. I want to make a recommendation, if I may, on the aspect that the review committee recommends to council that in finalising nomination agreement, the council ensures that Francis Cottage Lodge is used only for Rochford's homeless families who have a local connection, with the initial agreement being for 5 years. Chairman.
Okay, thank you for Councillor Weston. We need to stick with the first motion. There we go. So if there are no further questions, nobody else wants to... Councillor Mr Mason.
Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask for a point of order and ask our legal officer to advise. You'll notice that under interests to be declared, I declared that the Green and Rochford District residents members we're not going to be subject to a whip tonight, even those who are non-voting are not subject to a whip. Do the other parties present, other groups present, have to make similar declarations, or are they allowed just simply to have a silence on the subject?
Okay. Yep, I have been advised that if members have been whipped, then they are to declare it. Councillor Hookway.
Just for information, the UKIP group have a long-standing policy of a no-whip system.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lucas Gill. Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Mrs Mason.
The lights were as efficient as ever. Right. It was decided some time ago that that would be an agenda item, and it seems to have been lost for the last two meetings. So perhaps we can reinstate that so there is absolutely clarity that members of the review committee should not be whipped. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we did just notice that, so we will make a point of making sure that's on the next agenda. Returning to the motion that is on the floor at the moment, which has been proposed by Councillor Gooding and seconded by Hazelwood. I don't believe there are any further comments or questions with regards. We do need to take a vote on that motion. So is everybody happy, firstly, with the motion as in the wording? They're all aware of what they're voting for. Do you want me to read it out again? The motion is that the Review Committee recommends to Council that, as a valued partner, Sanctuary Housing continues to provide information and updates for local residents on the changes to Francis Cotty Lodge. Members in favour of that motion, could you please indicate and raise your hands? 7. And members against the motion? 7. I will also vote against it. So it's lost, I'm afraid. There is a second motion on the floor, I believe, that has been proposed by Councillor Weston. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Weston? Right, bear with me 1 second. Councillor Williams, seconder. And can you just repeat what you would like that motion to be?
The Review Committee recommends to Council that in finalising nomination agreement, the Council ensures that Francis Cottage Lodge is used only for Rochford's homeless families who have a local connection, with the initial agreement being for 5 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody, Councillor Mr Mason, sorry.
Once again, I have to repeat that that motion does not cover all the matters that I believe should be put before full council for action and clarification. It is only one of the items that I put forward. It doesn't include a plan for the elderly requiring accommodation, where this one has been lost. It doesn't cover issues of reporting back from the Rochford board, of which we submit members. I don't know what the role of those members are, and that needs to be agreed by full council. And I think full council needs to look at why the matter was in exempt, so members couldn't consult with the public. Okay. So I should be voting against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. As already indicated, on the 1st of June, when Sanctuary was here, they was asked that very, very same question that was, and our councillor or our member was sitting up there where you are, on homeless. I've forgotten her name, but it was the question was asked by to Sanctuary for reference to the 5 years term, and that was spoken about, and also for residents of Rayleigh, only for residents of Rayleigh, of which the chairman, or if you like, of Sanctuary turned around and said it would be. So I don't see any reason why we need to put this motion in context, because it's already been stated that it will be for the residents of Rayleigh, and I take it that he's made that agreement with RDC. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the comments by Councillor Stanley and by Councillor Mason. I'd like to say that I find the motion itself probably inadequate. Again, unfortunately, it probably gives less rights than were previously the case. On the basis of the motion as I heard it, it would take away nomination rights from Rochford Council. It would just give nomination rights to Rochford Housing as well, which and Rochford Housing have lower criteria than we do. It also fails to make the council learn from its mistakes. There's nothing going back to the council to say that we did something wrong. We didn't fully appreciate what was going on, and we're not taking any measures to address that at all in the motion. So I endorse the comments by previous councillors, Stanley and Mason, and I can't support the motion as it stands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Weston.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I believe that we're dealing with the Francis Cottage Lodge recommendation this evening. Any other points that are being brought up, I believe, should be separated from this motion. I quite understand the questions that have been brought forward from before haven't been answered properly, and I do believe that is a separate issue altogether. To do with the question to do with elderly people who are, I can never understand if they've got an elderly person who is homeless. Anybody who is homeless is, as we say, who have a local connection, will be within this recommendation. We're not just saying people who are under, 65, I know I'm 65. This is for anybody who is homeless, this recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Mason.
There. Right. Talking to this issue is not covered by this investigation. I'm sorry, you can't confirm one part of it, and all the other issues that have arisen were part of this investigation, part of the examination of the process, the failure to communicate, and the lack of transparency with the exempt papers. You can't isolate the bits that you want and ignore the rest. The whole thing has to be voted on. The recommendation as it stands, and obviously was circulated to us, is flawed. The recommendation says that in finalising the nomination agreement, the council ensures that Francis Cotty Lodge is used only for Rochford homeless families who have a local connection. However, Rochford homeless families are not necessarily on our housing register. And I would have assumed that the councillor would have intended this to be for residents of the district that are on our housing register. As this motion stands, it could be for any Rochford homeless family who have a local connection, and because that's undefined on our housing register, it is defined because it's defined before they're on our housing register. So this opens it to anyone having nomination rights. So again, the recommendation, I know it says possible recommendation, but it's been made, is flawed in that it's not accurate enough, and it certainly doesn't encompass all the problems and all the situations that Councillor John Mason has so eloquently listed, as have other councillors. So I can't support this as it stands.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway.
I'm going to find that I'm probably going to be repeating some of what Councillor Christine Mason's already stated. This this was brought before us as an issue which we've investigated, and we have to look at the evidence that's provided to us, and that therefore then takes us into a number of different areas. If the evidence that is given to us raises questions into other areas, then it's for this committee to look at that and to look at it as a whole. So although I feel that the motion attempts to narrow this down to something specific, I think that we are right as a committee to follow the evidence, follow the investigation, and seek to find recommendations that cover all of the issues that have been brought before us. Thank you.
Thank you. No other members have indicated to speak, so if we can go to a vote on the motion that has been proposed by Councillor Weston. Do members want me to read that out? Or are you happy? It's printed, so you're all okay with that? Okay, so members in favour of the motion that's put before us, please raise your hands. 7. And members against? 7. And I will be voting against as well. It seems to me that the recommendations have, the two motions that have been put forward, valid, but possibly not on their own. I've got here from notes from this evening's meetings, I think there are 4 further separate recommendations that members would want put forward, possibly to the 2 motions that have been put forward. So I've just taken some advice to see whether or not agreement would include all of them. So there would be the one put forward by Councillor Gooding and Councillor Weston. In addition, a recommendation regarding a plan for the elderly, which I'm assuming you are referring to the specific elderly. Sorry, I was distracted then. Elderly residents that are for homes accommodation.
Chairman, to respond to your question, when I made a list of my recommendations, I'm including all those elderly people who are registered on our housing register. And I think it's 75.
Yes. Okay. Also, I noted a recommendation with reporting back to full council, which was something that Councillor Lumley raised, and that would go forward as a recommendation that would be a procedure that was put into place. A recommendation regarding the nomination agreement, which I think really is covered by the proposal that Councillor Weston put forward, regarding the nomination agreement for 5 years, and that it's for Rochford's homeless families only with a local connection. Okay, bear with me and I'll come back to that. And the other one was with regards to the position of sanctuary board members. Were there any others? We'll come back to the one with regards to the nomination agreement. So we have nomination agreement, the elderly, reporting back to full council, sanctuary board members' position, and also the recommendation that was put forward by Councillor Gooding and Mrs Mason. You wanted to talk about the nomination agreement.
You carried on talking, so I was trying to indicate there was something else. Yes, we should learn that the openness and the lack of openness and transparency and the poor communication has led to this problem, and that should be looked at further to try and prevent this in the future. So that's another aspect.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Mr Hoy.
Oh, right.
You take it. Your turn.
Yeah. Thank you. I've got ahead of my leader this time. And it's right. Yeah, I've had the microphone turned on now. I still think Councillor Weston's part of the motion doesn't fully meet the requirements. I think quite simply it should be Rochford Council retains nomination rights for the 5 years. That's quite simple. It meets our criteria, and it gives Rochford Council the rights. I think that would be better. I don't know if Councillor Weston finds that acceptable. Sorry, Councillor Mrs Weston, I should say.
It's actually Councillor Burton's motion.
Councillor Burton's motion, sorry. It is, thank you for the correction. I
Councillor,
don't know if Councillor Burton finds that acceptable.
Councillor Mrs. West. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Mrs. Shaw, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Hoy, could you just repeat that, please?
Right, so I've got to remember what I said a few minutes ago now. That it's changed to Rochford Council retains its, or has the nomination rights for 5 years, full stop, and that's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Just clarification on the wording. The sanctuary, we don't sit on the sanctuary board anymore. That's no longer there. It's just that we still sit on a committee. There isn't a board system anymore there. I had a meeting, introduction meeting yesterday, and they don't have a board. It is now only a committee. Just for wording.
You may, yeah.
I think because the actual original decision was made as a board, and then I think the day after it was not a board.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Is that okay? Okay, any further comments? Anybody else indicating to speak? Nope. Okay, so I've inadvertently put a motion forward, which needs to be seconded. Thank you very much. That recommendations will go forward regarding the elderly accommodation for elderly people that are currently on the housing register, the matter of reporting back to full council, nomination agreement rights for 5 years, and the position of sanctuary committee members going forward. And have you got a proposed wording that you'd like to use for that? Okay. Sorry? So it's requirement to improve communication and openness and transparency.
You can make that a finding within your motion. It doesn't have to be something to be done. It can be a finding. This is what overview and scrutiny committees mostly do, is mostly make findings. That's a finding, as is a finding that members, because the item was in exempt on the 8th of June 2016, were in no position to consult with the public. It's a finding.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Angela's just going to confirm the wording.
Sorry, members, I'm just trying to assist the committee on some wording so we're clear on what recommendation you're putting forward. So we're going to break this down. So the recommendation as seconded by, and stop me to correct me as I go because I'm writing this down, seconded by Councillor Mr Mason is recommends to full council a report back on the waiting list, the elderly waiting list currently of 75, consisting of 75 residents, to be reported back to full council, and I've got by a housing options officer.
Yes, by the housing officer.
You got that? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Councillor, when you say elderly waiting list, surely our waiting list is to do with anybody on our waiting list, no matter what age they are, or am I confused? Sorry.
There were two separate waiting lists, I understand. One was for the sheltered accommodation and one for the... Yeah.
Thank you.
The second recommendation was for... Now, this is where I need to... Is it just council alumni you want reporting back to full council? It's the committee members reporting back to full council on information that they... on their meetings.
Yes, that's right.
Chairman, if you remember, Councillor Lumley made a statement that
She did.
the next Sanctuary Rochford committee meeting, if that's what it's called, I'll try hard, would consider the matter of reporting back. And I think council needs to receive the recommendation from that committee as to what it intends to do and clarify the role of members on that committee.
Thank you. So I would take that as the second recommendation. Also, there was a fourth one about the position of the sanctuary committee members, their role, their position, just to be clear on that. Yeah?
Okay, so
Members?
you're combining those two?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that okay?
That will be addressed, I think, wouldn't it? The subject of conflict of interest.
The conflict of interest, I can address that for you now. I mean, it's hard to say what the conflict of interest is until we know what the subject matter is. I mean, members here, you'll sit on parish councils dealing with planning applications, and then you also sit as a district member on the development control. Could it be argued that you have a conflict of interest there? You declare it as and when the issues come up, and you come to me for advice as to whether there is a conflict, and I will give you that advice whether you should be sitting in on that meeting or not. It doesn't preclude you from sitting on an outside body.
Thank you.
Sorry, going back to the recommendations, nomination rights. Did we get that down properly?
I think that one was clarified by...
RDC retains. Right. RDC to retain the nomination rights for 5 years. That was right? And minimum. Okay, that's fine.
And then lastly, is this the fourth point? Lastly, not a recommendation, but rather a finding by this committee that the lack of openness and transparency and lessons to be learned, and to look how we can prevent this in the future.
And all processes.
And
All processes.
and all processes.
Yeah, and requirements to improve communications.
And the process.
Okay.
Chairman, that's all I have, unless members are.
Okay.
thinking of this.
Okay, are members all happy with that and understand the wording? In that case, we need to take a
Seconded by Councillor
second by
Mason.
Councillor Mr Mason, yes.
You can take a vote on that now.
We need to take... Would members in favour of that motion raise their hands? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes that agenda item for this evening. I know there are members of the public here that were specifically here for that. If you wish to leave, you can do so now. If you wish to stay, you're absolutely more than welcome to stay.
I don't think they're too bad. No. I think they're okay. I think they're very reasonable.
There must be specific parts of that report they need to refer to. Okay. Okay. Okay, members, if we can return to agenda item number 6, which is the Air Quality Action Plan. With regards to this agenda item this evening, we are joined by Councillor Webb, who's the portfolio holder for Community, and Martin Howlett, Environmental Health Team Leader. This is a call-in of a portfolio holder decision. The decision was called in by Councillors Mr Hoy, Councillor Newport and Councillor Stanley. And the reason the plan is inadequate and does not properly address the need and requirement to reduce the pollution levels in the area. In addition, monitoring is not adequate to fully measure the pollution levels. Everybody, I believe, has received the report, which is quite a lengthy document. If I can ask either or Councillor Mr Hoy, Councillor Newport or Councillor Stanley firstly to begin. Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Yeah, the report is quite lengthy, so I've just made a few questions I'd like to ask about the report. First question being the cost of the report. Would it be possible for the officer to give a summary of the key changes from the last report that was issued in 2015? When I was looking at the public consultation on this report, 41 people responded to it, which I felt was pretty low. Is that because of a lack of publicity around the air quality in our district? Moving on from that, where in the report it states that we should be meeting the objectives by 2018, is this realistic? What has been done to raise awareness? And I see some of the measures of reducing the pollution rely on funding, and has any of this funding actually been secured, or are we just simply putting measures in that will never actually get implemented? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you able to answer or address any of those questions? Thank you very much.
Yes, Chairman. To take the points in order, in terms of the changes, we obviously have the published document that came to review committee back in October. In terms of the changes, there weren't a great many changes, but there was refinement of the wording in particular. And certainly as the document took its time, the Essex County Council, the actions that are attributable to Essex County Council, again, were updated further. So there was further clarification as to the progress of ongoing works and the plans as they were emerging from Essex County Council as the Highways Authority. The significant amendment that did take place was engagement with Arriva as a bus company, and that's one of the reasons for the consultation period. Is my microphone fading in and out? Oh. Sorry, I hope this assists. That was significant in terms of the plans that the company would like to put in place regarding routing, as well as then the which is effectively looking at right turns out of Crown Hill, as well as then the infrastructure, re-looking at lay-bys and capacity for buses to stop, without that in fact being to the detriment of the flow of the traffic through the town centre. So that's really the fundamental change, plus then the actual commentary in the report about the consultation process and so on. With regards to the response rate, it was 40 separate responses from individuals, statutory consultees, including town council, businesses, residents, and further afield in local authorities. That included residents both within and without the AQMA. The overall number, 40, and I know that I've corresponded with a number of members on this, compares very favourably with other AQMAs, in particular Colchester Town Council have a very large AQMA covering their entire town centre. They achieved only in the high 40s the consultation, and they had an equally strong direct mailing and social media campaign around their consultations. Unfortunately, response rates, we can only do our level best, and I have the details about the consultation measures we took if members require that. So I'm as an individual officer of the council, I'm content with the response rate that we received. With regard to the 2018 figure, yes, that is robust in terms of looking at the trends of the nitrogen oxide levels within the town centre, and importantly the number of receptors that would be subject to any levels within that area. You can see that it's on a steady decline, and in fact it's important to note that we could consider as an option a do-nothing policy. However, that's not practical in many reasons. One, because it doesn't achieve the objective in the fastest possible time, and the other is it doesn't secure the maintenance of that reduced level as we go forward. So we have this plan as a proportionate document to address the issue and maintain any improvement that we can secure. With regards to funding, you will note that there have been changes in the approach to monitoring across the AQMA. That's realised a saving which can go towards some of particularly the residential engagement, the driver engagement across the AQMA. Can also be considered going forward to the feasibility study. But a number of the measures are reliant on, once the document is approved and goes forward, and importantly that DEFRA support it, that we could put ourselves in a position to lever air quality grant funding from DEFRA to take some of those more financially expensive options forward into the future.
Thank you very much. Does that answer your questions, Councillor Newport?
Sorry, Chairman. My first question was what the cost of the report was. Thank you.
Are you able to confirm that?
The cost of the report to Rochford District Council was in the order of £15,000. £15,000, yes. Which was further topped up by Essex County Council by figure north of around £2,000, between £2,000 and £3,000. That was using Ringway Jacobs as their in-house integrated highways engineers and experts. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry, that I should say that was secured through what I understand to be a framework agreement that Essex County Council already have with certain providers for certain services. So it was recognised by our procurement team as a robust way of achieving this this report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gooding.
Thank you, Chair. Can the officer explain how many times RDC have hit the peak levels of this?
200 milligrams.
With 200 milligrams, is it? Micrograms.
Yeah, it's not milligrams, it's micrograms.
Micrograms, sorry.
Certainly, yes. In the reports, such as it details in the report previous to that, the latest detailed assessments show that we do not hit the 200 micrograms hourly rate. So this is solely an annual average issue, and it's documented within the report. You can see that we're marginally exceeding it, with a prediction that it will only be at one location in this calendar year. So the answer is none for the hourly rate, so the higher 200 milligram threshold.
You may, yep.
I can shout.
Shout.
Okay. So can you explain how this process works and how the information is fully gained? Thank you.
Certainly. So in terms of the approach to monitoring, we use the diffusion tubes, which are a passive means of assessing the nitrogen dioxide in the air. It's a small tube that we place against the receptor location, and they are changed on a timetable as set out by DEFRA as the government department that oversees this process. We have had more detailed monitoring up until middle of 2016, which was an automatic analyser located in the High Street at the junction with Eastwood Road. That gave us very detailed information on a 15 on a 15-minute basis, and it's from that that I derived that there were no exceedances of the hourly mean, and indeed gave us the information that's gone into this report to tell us that we have this marginal exceedance now only in Rayleigh Town Centre for the annual average level.
Does that answer your question? Councillor Mr Mason.
No, thank you, Chairman. Finally.
Wonders of vertigo.
I heard a rumour that the tubes in Rayleigh, the receptors you may call them, have been moved. If that's the case, can you confirm yes or no? Why were they moved, and what was wrong with them in the place they were? The second question is about, well, I heard there were 41 responses, which included statutory consultees and Uncle Tom Cobley and all, but I'm more interested in how many actual residents responded, and I'm a little surprised at how low that is, even though you're satisfied, because I believe the UK as a whole has actually failed to respond to the EU regulations on air quality, and most probably the World Health Organization. So I'm just a little surprised that with the sort of general impact on the TV screen and in our papers and everywhere else in our doctors' surgeries, that more people wouldn't have been aware. It's a bit like Francis Cotty Lodge. Sorry, mention the buzzword. Maybe there's a communications strategy issue here, because those people I speak to, air quality is the first thing they want to talk to me about. So I'm a little surprised by that. So I guess I've got the two questions about the receptors. Have they been moved? Why were they moved? And why were they in the wrong place in the first place then? Number of residents, and do you think that we could do better at communication?
Are you happy to answer those?
Sorry, I think that. Thank you. So taking those in turn, yes, as indicated in fact in the action plan itself, very early on we talk about the changes in monitoring that we will carry out. That is explained in there, but yes, to confirm the changes in the monitoring, we no longer have the automatic analyser, as I expressed in my answer to Councillor Mrs Gooding. We have increased the number of diffusion tubes, but moved them away from what we would call a roadside location, so on the pavement, where they were previously on lampposts, and we have now moved them to the facade of residential premises at locations near or around those premises that have been listed within the Air Quality Action Plan itself. There are two reasons for that. One is with the removal of the with the automatic analyser, which is necessarily on the pavement. We had our diffusion tubes co-located with that automatic analyser, and then for the purposes of equilibrating the data, then had the rest of the diffusion tube network, if you like, on lampposts. Having removed the automatic analyser, we can actually put the diffusion tubes on the facade of the receptors building, so on the homes that have agreed, and that gives us first-hand data there and then at the receptor. So it's just more robust, if you like, in that there is no extrapolation of data from the roadside to the facade of the home. But in terms of creating the report that you see in front of you, you'd still have to run a computer model to get the red and blue areas that you see in the plan. So we've got better data at the window and the front doors of the people living in the air quality management area.
You may, yeah.
When you say better data, can you explain to me what's better about it? Is it better because it's lower, or is it better because that fits with the statutory requirement? I don't understand.
Better simply in that the analysis and the extrapolation doesn't need to be carried out. There's no calculation to be done. It's raw data at the receptor. So it's just it's no more or less accurate, but it's more directly achieved. In terms of the number of residents that responded, I don't have the final number in front of me, but I think it was in the high teens once we factored in all of the other data, but I can certainly supply that to committee members after this if they would like a breakdown. I know that it's been communicated to some of the members on this committee already, but I can make sure the whole committee receives it.
That's probably me, because I would be one of the residents that replied. If you could confirm that for the committee, thank you.
And in terms of the final number with the communications, actually, I have the breakdown here. If members will bear with me, I'll quickly rattle through what we did. So all 223 households within the AQMA received a letter signposting them to the consultation. Email Rayleigh Chamber of Trade with a request that they circulated it to their businesses, which they did. Hard copies of the consultations were placed at our receptions, both in the council offices and the civic suite, and in all of the libraries across the district. Myself, I directly briefed the clerk to Rayleigh Town Council, and I know that that was then further discussed at a Rayleigh Town Council meeting prior to their group and individual responses. The air quality consultation featured on our website, as Rochford District Council website, in the Have Your Say section. It also featured in the news and events section. It also was on our air quality pages and featured on the Essex Air website. We also had it on our social media, so Facebook and Twitter, and again it was retweeted by the Essex Air Twitter page. It was also circulated and then featured in local newspapers. Press releases were issued, and I know that they were published as well. The Rochford and Castle Point CCG had a press release and social media presence as well regarding the decision, and indeed the consultation period was extended from the original planned 4 weeks to just over 5 weeks to take in the Christmas and New Year period as well. And all statutory consultees received an email directly linking them to encourage the response as well. As part of the consultation process, I received a number of emails and a number of calls, to which I responded, and they elicited further contacts from others. And of course, with the consultation itself, we also wanted residents within the AQMA to volunteer their premises, and a number did.
Thank you very much.
Chairman, I'm going to do one of my classic findings. The finding appears to be, despite all of that amazing communication, that residents don't seem terribly interested, but the world seems terribly interested in this subject. I'm just utterly gobsmacked. And if the press were here, I'd love them to use that as a wonderful headline. You know, councillors gobsmacked that more residents are not interested in air pollution or air quality. I'm absolutely shattered. One question, if I may, could the officer find this out for me? How many hits did our website get to that particular page during the period? And I'm not asking for it now. If you could, when you tell us the breakdown of the number of residents, you know, or that, could you? That'd be really helpful.
If you could look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
as Martin will know, we...
Oh, sorry.
No, it's turned back on
No,
again.
it doesn't work.
Oh, it keeps on. It keeps.
There we go.
Thank you. Sorry, Chairman. Thank you for that. Yes, it was some time ago that we, myself and another councillor spoke to Mr Howlett on the diffusion tubes and felt that the area that he said was going to be looked at as to the Raleigh Town Centre, and we felt that it should be further out, and as he well knows, that the air quality doesn't stay in the town centre, it moves around, and it moves down the hill, across Eastwood Road and so on. And I'm a bit disappointed that a full survey of the area wasn't in the report. Also, I'm disappointed that 2016, I believe, only had 2 to 4 months of evidence, and he well knows that he can't incorporate that into his projection because it has to be 9 to 12 months. So that should have been taken out. And he also well knows that the air quality is not good, it's above, and has been above for some time. And I would like to ask him why this is so, that this is in the report, where it doesn't mean anything at all. And to have an average over a period of time, 5 years or whatever there may be, with the ingress of another 1,000 homes, if not 1,500 homes, which will possibly have 2 or 3 cars in the future, and how you can document the future response in 2018 will be lower. We have no cycle pathways. We have no electric plugs to plug in for electric cars in car parks. In fact, there is only one in Essex. So how you can reduce that pollution by 2018 is beyond me. Thank you.
Would you like to come back on that, or can you come back on with regards to put forward?
Yes, I think so. If I'm clear enough on some points to extract from that. I think the first point is that the air quality management area was declared back in 2015 against what is a national objective. It's called target, if effectively, which is 40 micrograms for nitrogen dioxide. It's not something we've created as a target for ourselves, so we are required to report against that as the figure. So just so we know what the parameters are that we're dealing with. In terms of many of the actions you talk about there, clearly they feature in our action plan about the charging point cycle, encouraging modal shift. You know, they are all there. This plan is discrete to dealing with the air quality management area. Necessarily, that is what DEFRA require, and that is what has been produced, I believe, very well, and with a very smooth process, and as described to review committee back in October. If there are any further points that the councillor would like, I'll respond to them.
Is that you satisfied with that response, Councillor
Yeah,
Stanley?
the questions being asked is, DEFRA are not aware of our housing situation, and obviously are not aware, they're only dealing with today and not tomorrow. And I don't just mean tomorrow, I mean tomorrow, when all these houses are built and when all these cars are on the road. That we haven't And I know what the recommendations are, but surely we should have had cycleways right the way through the district. We haven't got any charging points as yet, and this is the 21st century, and we are supposed to be ahead of the game, I'm sure. But we've only got one in Essex, and that's a long way off. I think it's in Colchester. So it's a long way to go and charge your car to bring it back and find it's discharged. And things like this that we haven't got motivated to do. I don't see DEFRA concerning themselves. I know it's the DEFRA's criteria that we're working to, but according to your plans or your documentation, is that it is over the 40. May it be only just over. My other point, by the way, is that taking these tubes or files or whatever you like to call them away from the footpath and onto people's properties, I don't find many people walking through the front gardens. So that's a little bit odd to me, because I usually find footpaths are at the side of the road, so therefore the health of the participants using the footpath and not people's front gardens to walk through is well important, other than putting it on a property that is 20, 30 foot away. I don't see the relevance of that. It should be on the footpath, because you and I have to walk that. And when we're walking up Crown Hill and getting all that congestion in there, we're not doing ourselves any good. So putting it on a property doesn't really sort of sound the right thing to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you able to address those points? They're not specific questions, but... All right.
Yes, Councillor. So first off, in terms of DEFRA's knowledge and expectation of us, we obviously the air quality management area has fallen out as a area of work that's come management duties. We report to DEFRA on an annual basis in what's called an annual status report. That acts as effectively a screening tool. So not only do we report on our progress, but we report on changes in the district, which would include residential developments. It's a document that has a template, and we last reported back in June 2016 with that. It is annual, as the name. Full knowledge of any plans or indeed any changes. The second point, in terms of the pathway, what we would call relevant receptors for the work that we're carrying out here for the 40 microgram level is in the houses. It's at the facade of the residential buildings. It excludes roads, pathways, even the front gardens to the houses. It starts at the front door and goes backward in the property. So the diffusion tubes are in exactly the right location. They're at the furthest place forward, if you like, in terms of where there is any relevant exposure. The answer I gave earlier regarding to the 200 microgram per metre cubed level as a peak, that's relevant on the pathway. So that would affect both pedestrians, anyone sitting in a cafe outside. All those people suddenly become relevant receptors in the definition. Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mr Hoy.
I didn't realise so many people had got in front of me.
There are quite a few people left to speak as well.
Thank you. So I'll be as quick as I can. I was hesitant in calling this report in. This had been originally, the AQMA was originally signed off, I believe, in January 2015. One of the horrifying points about this is it's taken since then to even get the report issued. If I point out to you, because I'm sure some members don't realise this, because this started before most of us here were members. I think I was a member for less than a year before this started, 2011. So this is how long it's taken. I think one of the things I'm horrified about is the length of the process, and I know, Mr Howlett, I've said that before, and I understand to some extent you're tied by what you need to do. I also understand Councillor Stanley's point about why you measure on the front of a house. I understand the rules, but I think you'll have recently read reports about the pollution in cars. The actual cars causing the pollution is probably one of the worst places to be, on the road. So I understand the points Mr Howlett's making, and I understand fully it, but it's just to say that it's wrong in many respects, what we're reporting on. If I draw members' attention to page 6.26, I'm aware that this report is only on the air quality management area. However, in the first paragraph 2.1 on that page, it does say in the final sentence, no current exceedances of the objectives have been identified anywhere else in the district of Rochford. Probably because we don't measure many other places in Rochford. I really don't like that sentence being there. It's indicating that the rest of Rochford has no problem. I really do not believe that. That's the first point. I really have trouble with that sentence. I'd be happier if it said we haven't fully measured other parts of the district to know, but where we do measure, we know it has not been exceeded. And that's quite restrictive where we do measure, I know. Further on, the points I'm trying to make, I'm a member of the Green Party. I speak to Friends of the Earth. John Fuller, I know well, is involved in the court case against the government. I believe the automatic monitoring is more reliable than the diffusion tubes, but I understand it's also more expensive. So my concern is we've gone for a less reliable but cheaper way of measuring. I'll leave that there. I know it's been raised by Councillor Stanley, so I'll leave it there. Other points which have been raised by Councillor Newport, sorry. A lot of the proposals on this report, or the action points, are depending on funding. If I take on page 6.48, and I know Councillor Steptoe's indicated to speak, I don't know if he's chairman or not of the local highways panel at the moment. He was the vice chair. No one knows yet, and I know Councillor Weston will be on there at some point. However, on point 3, changes to pedestrian crossing points, this has been dropped by the local highways panel, I seem to remember, as being too expensive and actually not achieving very much, which I know it says this, but in reality it's not depending on funding, it just will not happen. There is no funding. And I find that through the whole report. Not everything, some things there. I think the report is something which we've written. It's cost us £15,000 as a council, and I think the points on it are very unlikely to make any difference to the measurements at all, because they would either have happened already or are happening through other measures, and many of them won't happen. The cycle routes, I know of one new cycle route in the district, which happens to be along the Holbridge Road, which actually didn't actually finish the end of where it's supposed to have finished. The local plan where applications are being passed, they don't appear to include cycle routes or funding or Section 106 for cycle routes, or where they do, it's very minimal. The transport plans, they're 6 free tickets or 6 books of tickets to new residents. They're just not achieving very much, and that's the problem with this report. I think it says a lot of things which are collectively sound quite good, and if they happen, brilliant. But I think overall they're going to be having minimally impact at all, even though minimally. I mean, I'm just on one page at random, 6.5. They're all less than 0.2. So individually, they're going to have a minimal impact. Collectively, they may, but most of them just will not happen, and that's the problem I have with it. The big problem I have is that if this is a air quality management plan just for the area, we shouldn't be mentioning that other areas don't have a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Would you better comment on the last sentence on paragraph 2.1, if that can be changed, or can you confirm that other areas have been monitored?
Certainly. The comment is I should say straight off, not one I'm beholden to. So yes, in theory, subject to advice I take regarding the plan as it's agreed, is not critical to the report. However, as just a point of note, obviously we have been monitoring at various locations across the whole district for a good number of years now. Obviously, more than a decade, closer to 15 years. That has been in a targeted fashion, And over the years, as explained at the last review committee that I attended in October, that has been refined as well. And because of the annual reports that we put forward for DEFRA, if there were concerns over the levels that we achieved at the monitoring locations and we were withdrawing sites too early, that would have featured in the feedback from DEFRA. It never has. So I believe that we have taken a relatively cautious approach to the deployment of monitoring locations across the district. And yes, we do retain just a few. It's now just down to 2 locations outside of Rayleigh Air Quality Management Area. But that also indicates the
Can you just confirm
the
where they
downward
are?
trend of nitrogen dioxide across the country.
Can you
as well as the
confirm where those
district.
2 locations are?
I can, yes, they're in the public domain. They one is in South Street in Rochford, and the other is at the Amberlin junction, so in Sutton Road, South End Road junction in Rochford.
Okay. So at those 2 other locations, you can confirm that there has been no evidence that those limits have been
They're
exceeded?
not in exceedance, but we continue to monitor them as they're not sufficiently below the 40 microgram per metre cubed annual average that I would be happy withdrawing those sites. Indeed, because of Section 106 monies that would come forward from the Hall Road development in Rochford, there should be some funding to support monitoring at that location indeed. So for continuity of data, it also serves us.
Okay. So another point that Councillor Hoyer raised there, he's obviously more knowledgeable than I am, was that there is perhaps a more effective method of measuring, what did you say, automatic?
Sorry, it's the method which was being used, but now is no longer being used.
And so was that, can you just confirm, was that decision taken purely based on cost?
Not purely on cost, no. Indeed, the lead author of the report, the principal consultant at Air Quality Consultants, positively recommended it, as it wasn't a source of data required for the extent of the issue that we have in Rayleigh Town Centre. And indeed, we would be better served by redeploying the diffusion tubes to the receptor locations. The tubes that we deploy are subject to a national bias correction factor on an annual basis, which is obviously national in nature, so is robust.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's 2 aspects of questioning I'd like to enter into. So firstly, I'd like to look at the air quality action plan measures. We've heard about the monitoring and how that has been changed. And then we have a list of traffic management, bearing in mind that this air quality management area was signed in January 2015. So we're 2.5 years down the road. So I would expect to see some positive outcomes here, whether they're under 2 milligrams per litre or whatever. But I read down it, and it reads more like a wish list rather than any plan. Panel have decided not to fund. Yeah. The next one, operators to determine whether cleanest buses could be used, is operators to determine no current funding, no schools in Rayleigh involved at present, promote, identify appropriate quiet routes, no cafes, this is the cafe escape, no cafes in Rayleigh at present. Funding will need to be identified, likely to be implemented. I've just picked out a few at random. Likely to include cycle paths. We'll take a look. I mean, I could go on. Will be looked at, needs to include, could be pursued, alternative approach could be to add air quality considerations, may need to include requirements in local plan, and so on. None of these, I would have expected after this length of time to have a much more positive situation to say that these initiatives had been implemented. And I can understand that they're not all within your control, but if they're unachievable and they're a wish list, they shouldn't be under a traffic management plan. They should be as something that we would like to do, but we can't do. I would expect a traffic management to show what can be achieved, and I'm a little bit concerned that it looks very good, and I'm sure as someone's commented, we've paid a lot for it, but bearing in mind the effect that air pollution has on health, and it has a silent effect, and it has an effect on the most vulnerable members, like most things of our society, the elderly and the young and the unwell. I would have hoped for a much more positive comment. Even if there were just 5 or 6 of them, I'd rather see something that we are doing rather than things that we would like to do. So how realistic is this wish list?
Can I turn you off?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, to come to your point, it is agrees that some of the actions are concrete, already in train, or will definitely happen. A lot of the actions do require certain funding, but we have only just emerged from the consultation process as well, so that informs some of these. I think also that it is in the nature of the document and a requirement from DEFRA to show all of the options we have considered and retain those that even if it is at a stage of, say, feasibility, initial contact to achieve them. So I take your point that not all of the points in here will get realised, but we will work towards achieving as many as we can and as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that answers it. It might have helped if that perhaps they were split between achievable and non-achievable. It might have made it slightly better, but that's just a matter of presentation. And the other question that I'd like to raise, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is when you came to the meeting in October, and this was discussed then at some length as well, I believe, you advised us at that time that if we wanted other sites monitored, we only had to ask. We asked. We were refused. Can you tell me why and who made that decision, please?
Could you just clarify?
Yeah,
are you able to?
The question is, we were advised at the last review committee in October that if we wanted other sites monitored, that we only had to ask.
Yeah. Sorry, I mean, can you just confirm where you asked for it to be, or is that just to help answer the question? That's all.
Well, the principle is the principle I want to know is why, when we were told that we could have other sites investigated, that when that request was formally made, I believe it was Councillor Reeves.
Councillor Newport.
And Councillor Newport. I mean, it was more than one councillor. We were refused. And all I'm asking is why that refusal came after we'd been assured that it wouldn't, and why and who made it, and what was the logic behind it.
Do you know?
Thank you.
Yes, both from councillors and from the public, there was some requests for additional monitoring to occur around the district, based on officer knowledge, previous data, and the process such as we've taken it. And as I say, it's a refined process over a good many years. The locations that were presented, which would be an issue regarding the annual average level for nitrogen dioxide. So it's a course of proportionality and necessity. Okay.
So there were several people involved in making that decision?
There were some, yes, it wasn't myself alone, and I know that I certainly had a conversation, I forget it was in person or email, but with Sean Scrutton as part of those processes, yeah.
So who had the final say?
I think it was a mutual agreement. Him taking my advice as to the data and the sites that we knew of.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor Mrs. Mason? Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
I think most of my questions have been answered. I wanted to know what the three councillors who called this in, what were their expectations, and I do think we've actually, Martin has come up with a lot of answers, and the three councillors have actually asked their questions, so that's,
Okay.
I just want to know what their expectations were. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gooding.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know if anyone can carry out these measurements. Could I, as a member of public, carry out this process at all?
I'll give it a test tube.
There's no legal bar to anyone can out. Of course, you know you would be keen to get as robust the data as you can, and there are guidelines for deploying them and a specific calendar, such that they can be robustly analysed and corrected at year end as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weston, Mrs. Weston. Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point, really. I'm not sure where Councillor Stanley got his information about charging points for electric cars. To my knowledge, within 10-mile radius, there's 16. That's not counting main dealers where they all have them now. Most of them have them. I think it is a good thing that perhaps Rochford should consider putting them in their car parks. Also, new houses, it should be obligatory for them to have charging points. And I understand, interestingly, from a meeting that we had last week, that buses now legally have to be no older than 6 years old for local bus services. So this, I would think, would only improve the situation with air quality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to raise the point that Councillor Williams raised, that there are a considerable number of charging points around the whole area. Two particular ones that spring to mind is a particular property in Shoebury and also the Civic Centre at Southend.
Okay, thank you very much. We have still indicated that they wish to speak. So if we can keep the... short and concise. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not very often you could, if you had an electric car, you could go into a dealership and use their electricity. I don't know that you could do that at any given time unless you made pre-arrangements for it, because I'm sure they wouldn't just say, yeah, you can plug in whenever you like.
I believe that is the case.
What, plug in whenever you like?
Yes.
That's amazing. Good luck to them. That's all I can say. On the basis of the two, on the basis of recent or evaluating the pollutants with these files in previous years, I would like to ask if because of the volume of traffic now is considerably more than what it was in recent years, going back, and it is a lot more than what we anticipated, that surely we should have these files put back to evaluate what it is, where and more than the two that we understand that are there at the moment. Or
so is your question...
There? So my question is, should they be reinstated because of the volume of traffic that we're getting with not only the house building fraternity, that lorries and what have you, that there is a considerable more traffic. And I've noticed that on Hamrow Hill, the lorries are going past there like one every 20 minutes, you know. So to obviously, where to Hall Road. So should we not be putting those receptors back?
Okay, could you address that?
Yes, I'm conscious, Chairman, that we're going away from the report and the discrete nature of the report, which is about Rayleigh Town Centre and the action plan for it. But to summarise in brief, that we obviously have other sources of information, such as those air quality assessments that come in with the larger residential development schemes, and officers use those as well to get an indication of the situation. And I have a number here, both particularly in West Rayleigh, where air quality assessments have accompanied the planning permissions or the planning applications, and traffic data that's up to date, and obviously the modelling that's been deployed by the specialists.
So, as you've pointed out, so just to confirm, there are no plans to reinstate any other diffusers or monitoring equipment anywhere else in the district other than the ones that are currently there. However, that will be reviewed periodically.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Are you able to confirm how often it's reviewed?
We carry out the annual status review, and we use that as a screening tool. And clearly, as developments come online and other sources of information are brought to us, that's a constant source of knowledge and for us to analyse.
Okay, so somewhere like, for example, London Road in Rayleigh, where there is lots of development planned, officers would be aware and that would be considered as a place.
Indeed, Mr. Chairman, yes. Just briefly, 190 London Road, when that was developed, had an air quality assessment, as have developments by Timber Grove. The land adjacent Grange Villa was included within the larger land north of London Road development, as other sites, as they're of a certain size, particularly where they require a scoping opinion, we're requesting air quality assessments.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that okay, Councillor Stanley? Councillor Newport.
Obviously a lot, and as we all know, that DEFRA lost the court case because the way the air quality is woefully inadequate. How well is this air quality plan going to fit with the government's new air quality plan, or will we be, as we walk out of here, will we be looking to produce another plan? And also, in the report states that other areas haven't got a problem in Rayleigh, and we don't really know, in the district, sorry, we don't really know that for a fact, because as we've heard, those areas aren't monitored, and I think that should be removed from the report.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can respond to that. With regards to the work that we carry out here, this is local air quality management to achieve national objectives. The case where Client Earth have successfully taken DEFRA to task in High Court for the inadequacies of the National Air Quality Plan, that's DEFRA's work and the work that the Secretary of State for DEFRA is charged with for achieving the EU levels. And that in particular looks at those agglomerations, to use the EU term, and primarily looks at the larger roads around the country. So it's focused on roads such as the O127 rather than roads that you would find obviously within the town centre itself. So our work is separate, but the key point that overlaps here is that the target and the threshold are the same. So that 40 micrograms per metre cubed actually happens to be for the same pollutant and is the same level, just in different places. I actually am meeting with representatives of DEFRA on the 7th of July to find out what the implications of the revised National Air Quality Plan is for Rochford. And I will be responding back into my portfolio holder and colleagues after that meeting.
So, Chairman, just like to add, just for we need to bear in mind here, remember that the levels of the air pollution that we're talking about here are actually very low. in terms of what's actually been carried out. The response needs to be proportionate in terms of where the threshold is 40 milligrams, and the areas that we're talking about is only slightly above the recommended levels, and then only then within a small number of locations in Aqua. I think the office has done a fantastic job here in terms of not only an excellent consultation, but carrying out a plan that's been done with external guidance as well. I have every confidence in my officer and the work that he's carried out.
Thank you very much. I have, at the moment, I've got two members who have indicated to ask questions. I'm conscious of the time. We've still got quite a few bits to go through. And we have had a request for a comfort break as well. So if I can ask Councillor Lucas Gill your question, and then Councillor Hookway for the moment. If you can...
Thank you, Chairman. Just a very quick one. Southend Airport have measuring equipment near the Anne Boleyn and another set of equipment just outside the Rochford boundary. Do they report the figures to the council?
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Those data, both one location within the Rochford district and the others just around the main surface access to road surface access to Southend Airport, are reported directly to officers at Rochford and Southend Council. I believe they're also published as part of the annual report the Southend Airport produces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is in relation to the sensitivity of the equipment and the extrapolation of the data from that. Is it? Are you able to identify peaks related to specific days and time periods? In respect of that. Obviously, air quality is affected by, I would imagine there's a seasonal aspect to air quality, and there's also a sort of like a weather aspect to air quality. So are you able to identify any correlation between those various different things in relation to the peaks and the data?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the answer, the automatic analyzer that we used to have would record the data on the units as I described earlier. That would see quite a sensitivity and show the peaks and troughs. Because the levels that was coming up were nowhere near the 200 micrograms per metre cubed on an hourly basis, there was no justification really to keeping that any longer. The diffusion tubes, because we're looking at an annual average, will only give us effectively a monthly, that's either a 4 or 5 week period average. So yes, we do see seasonal variation. We would also, out of that, if we know there are roadworks or road diversions and those sorts of things, we would see a change in the data produced. And obviously that's where the local knowledge comes in as well. But no, we wouldn't see any more sensitive to that. To take into account rain showers or those sorts of things and how they may influence the data. Again, we're looking at an annual average, so actually we can have quite coarse data that is robust.
Thank you. If we could take final questions from Councillor Mrs Mason and then Councillor Mr Hoy. Okay, thank you. Councillor Mr Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. It was less a question, more of a statement maybe. It was mentioned, I think it was probably Councillor Shaw asked what we as councillors called it in, we're hoping to get out of it. I think for myself, I was trying to find out what the issues were. My big problems, if I've said, and I think other councillors recognise this, that it's taken an awful long time to produce this report, and I was hesitant in calling it in because it has taken so long. However, I felt that the 5 days, maybe it would delay it a week or 2 weeks. That's fine to get to an understanding of it. But I think perhaps if we go back to what Councillor Mason was saying on a previous subject, perhaps we as a review committee could issue a couple of findings, one of which would be, in my opinion, that this has taken too long to produce. I think when we've got a situation which is causing people's deaths, and air pollution causes 50,000 deaths a year in this country. I couldn't extrapolate that to radio, I'm afraid, so sorry, I don't know, but it will be some deaths a year caused by this. I think it's important that we produce these reports on a quick and timely basis, and I understand, I know from previous reports made to this committee by Mr Howlett that it was also, not just us as a council, it was also outside bodies. I believe Essex Highways were delayed this, but I think it should be recognised that this report should have been produced for publication earlier. And again, it's no reflection on the portfolio holder at the moment. He's come into this at the very recently, sorry, and I can understand that. In addition, I'd also like a finding that we shouldn't be saying that there are currently no exceedances of the objectives anywhere else in the district. I'd be happy for it to say any of our other monitoring points in the district, which I think would be much more accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we've discussed this subject at length this evening. Are members happy, or satisfied, I should say, with the findings that Councillor Mr Mason is proposing? Sorry, Councillor Mr Hoy is proposing. If you could show with a show of hands, perhaps. Okay. So if we can report those findings. And do you want to mention that?
I think one finding you've got to recommend it back to the portfolio holder for that possible change.
I'm conscious of delaying it. Surely if we're just saying we don't necessarily agree with the wording, it doesn't have to be changed. It's up to the committee what we do with that.
Can we change it? Is the wording able to be changed without
Too much delay?
Without significant delay? No exceeds. Well, I think the emphasis needs to be anywhere else in the district to the monitoring points within the district. If that can be done without significant delay, are members happy with that? If that can be implemented, that would be good. Thank you. Thank you very much. If we can just take a 5-minute break, as members have indicated, and reconvene here at past. Thank you.
relevant. So
It's not easy, is it?
Okay, thank you, members. If I can ask you to take your seats. Do I need to mention Councillor Cooper's not come back? No. Councillors? Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 7, which is the overall work programme. This would have been circulated to members, or the agenda has. This part is to decide on the work plan for the committee for the next year. It's worth bearing in mind there are ongoing projects which are not listed, but they are the review of the Constitution, review of the ITC contract starting with telephony, a review of the use...
Excuse me, Chairman, I better just ask a question. On this, on one of your topics, you've got the Training Standards Committee, I'm Chairman. Do I need to... No, don't. Oh, thank you. Okay.
No? Okay, thank you. Yep, so there's a review of the ITC contract starting with telephony and a review of the use of Treasury Management Advisors. The reports to be included in the Treasury Manager report coming to the committee in July. We also have reports on Community Safety Partnership during the year. Members will see that some new topics have been raised. Enforcement of unauthorised adverts, charging for bins for new developments not being applied universally, loss of income, and training standards committee needing to take more control, leadership over training. And sanctuary due back in October, November. Also, have any members got any comments at all on those items or the topics that have been put forward for review over the next year? Councillor Mr Hoy.
Sorry, Chairman, my brain's trying to start working again. Forgive me if you did mention it in the list of ongoing projects. I don't think it is an ongoing project, but we were promised a return, which was building control. Did you mention that? I apologise if you did.
No, correct.
But they did promise to come back, and I can't remember when. December, that was it.
Sanctuary, you mean? Or
It's building control.
oh, yes, yes.
He was going to update us once he...
Yes.
he'd done everything.
You're right, so that's just been missed.
Yeah,
sorry, yes, that's just been missed, unfortunately. Councillor Hoogway?
Yeah, it's just from my memory, that was to do with they're looking to develop that, weren't they? As a form of sort of like a money stream coming into the council, weren't they?
Yeah, he was changing the makeup of it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from members? No. You'll notice there as well that item number 8 on the agenda is the methodology, which is to discuss how we take those topics forward. I've discussed this with Paul. Enforcement of unauthorised adverts. We would initially probably ask for a report to come forward from... Oh, sorry, you've just said Yvonne Dunn.
Yeah.
From Yvonne Dunn for members to consider. Charging for bins for new developments, again, we would probably request a report from Marcus. And training, we would need to agree how we would like that one discussed and taken forward. I don't know if the members that put that topic forward have got any ideas on that. Councillor Mr Mason.
Chairman, I'm not sure I put it forward, but I certainly experienced the issue. At the moment, I don't know how the subjects for training get chosen. I haven't got a clue. I don't think any other member knows either, because we're not involved. And it's as simple as that. We're not involved in deciding on what the training subjects are or the content. And that's the issue. So maybe we ought to be asking for a report from whoever does it, because I don't know who does it, on actually how these subjects are actually chosen as subjects and the content decided upon.
Thank you. Are members happy with that proposal by Councillor Mr Mason. I understand it's John Bostock who decides, so we can request a report maybe initially from him, or maybe not, as Paul's going to inform us now.
I'll pull John out the fire for this one. It's usually me with the chairman, and I ask the chairman or make suggestions, and well, the review committee chairman at the time, as I did, well, for training for the review committee.
Chairman, this has been misunderstood. Review committee training is a completely is has always been completely separate, and I agree, has been the opening scrutiny officer working with the chairman and other members.
It is John then.
Yes. Yeah, but it is John Bostock. Yeah, that's been confirmed. So Paul's off the hook.
Sorry, I just misunderstood.
Okay.
Chairman, can I just say?
Yes.
It probably is. But it is discussed at the Standards Committee about the training that goes forward. Some of the training we're talking about different training.
Maybe it will be under your chairmanship.
Okay. You're now.
The whole idea is that it should be. At the moment, I think I might have put this forward as we are presented with a programme, whether or not it has any relevance or any wishes from the members. There's no input. The dates are preset. The subjects are preset. We could be getting training that we don't need. We could be getting training and not getting training that we do need. We could be wasting an awful lot of money and an awful lot of time. It just needs to be investigated. So how and who, I don't mind.
John Bostock.
Okay. I think, yeah, we need to request a report in the initial phase from John Bostock, and take those from there. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Any members got any other topics or questions on the topics that have already been put forward? No? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Mr Hoy.
Sorry, Chairman, one of the other routes to having something in the review committee is members of the public. Would it be appropriate to ask if Rochester District Council wants to put it on their Facebook page? If any members of the public have anything they need to put on or would like reviewed?
That's okay. Regarding topics that we can review. Is it not already on there?
But not on the Facebook. It's actually on the website.
Okay. Yep, that's fine. Anything else? Nope. Okay. So that's agenda items 7 and 8 covered. Moving on to number 9, which is the key decisions document. Have we got any spare copies? I don't know if we have we? Does anybody need a copy, or can they share a copy? Can I throw this over to you? Do you need to mention about that? Oh, that's all right. Well, I did for a minute, and then I suddenly thought, no, it's fine. Do you need to mention about the scene enforcement policy? You have emailed members about it, saying it had been removed.
No, yeah, no one.
So, no.
If they ask,
Okay. Yep. Have all members got access to see the key decision report? If I can ask Paul just to go through that with members, thank you.
Okay, members. The first one is the Environmental Health Service Plan, which is an annual one. This was originally on for the 28th of April and has now been moved to the 30th of June. And as he says, it's ICT dependencies that's held that up. Moving on, We've got two new ones. Number 517, the South Essex Strategic Housing Market Assessment, 217 addendum, and then the South Essex Economic Development Needs Assessment, 2017.
Councillor Mr Mason.
Just to comment, Chairman, particularly on the SHMAR 0517, I've already read it. So I'm a little bit surprised we haven't got it in front of us. Well, in front of members generally.
This is an addendum.
Is anybody able to comment on that or can look into that? Or?
I can look into it. I think, did I see something in the Echo that Billericay have published?
Yes, Chairman. The Echo spoke to somebody who got his name completely wrong. But that's the standard of media reporting. This particular addendum has been published, and it's currently being discussed by interested members of the public. I'm just a little surprised that, having seen it myself, and I know the public are discussing it, why we haven't already seen the report with members, that's all.
Can you raise that with Matthew Thomas? And
We'll
report
raise
back?
that and report back.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Hoy.
Thank you. Nearly eyes in the back of your head there. I've raised this in other areas as well. I'm sure I've raised it on these. I'm getting a little bit annoyed about the just changing the date. I know you've made a reference, or Mr Gow's made a reference to the fact that 4/17 has been delayed, and it says there ICT pendants have held up. Why isn't the original date there? I still think they ought to be publishing the original date by their original target date, and where that has been changed, it should be noted. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make sure that in future they do that. I'll have a word with them, because that was the understanding that we'd come to.
Okay, thank you. Any members, any other questions? No? Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 11, which is exclusion of press and public. There are none, so I won't need to read out the notice.